hosting this call today. So thank you. My goal today, I've got some topics I want to cover, but really I want to open this up for everybody, have this be an opportunity for us to hopefully have some takeaways and learn from somebody from a best practice or some way that we can speak to our clients better and be more intelligent. I feel like I've been training for this for the last 3 weeks, homeschooling children and dealing with Zoom calls. So please mute yourselves when you're not speaking, so that we all don't have to listen to you have a conversation, or your dog, or you snoring if this gets boring, whatever it is. Mute yourselves if you're not speaking. The way that I will like handle questions, if you guys click on participants on the bottom of your screen, when you click that, there's a box that shows up that shows all of the participants, and then it shows raise hand. So this is just like grade school. If you raise your hand, then I will call on you. If for some reason I completely miss you, you can yell through, but I think with over 50 people on here, that's the easiest way to not have multiple people speaking over each other. So with that, you guys will see here, the way I wanted to start this out was just talk about and get some input from you guys as far as opportunities. I know a lot of what we're going to talk about is dealing with the crisis and dealing with clients and advising them in what they can do, can't do, what they should be doing, whether it's tenants, landlords, investors, all of the above. But I kind of threw out 3 different points here that I wanted to just, maybe bounce off of everybody, and then also get some feedback if I'm missing other ones, because I really see this as an opportunity for industrial. I've had the opportunity of sitting on the office and the retail call, and I think everybody shares, on different and in different ways. As brokers, as I had on my first slide, volatility equals transactions. So I want the goal of this to be talking about how we can be working together and how we can truthfully make more money off of this as we come out of it. So, as you see on the slide, the potential reshoring and onshoring of manufacturing, obviously a big benefit for industrial, increased retailer inventories, as opposed to having it held in China or someplace else. And then obviously the easy low-hanging fruit is e-commerce growth, which everybody is speaking on and talking about. So I'll open it up now. If anybody else wants to kind of just, maybe we have a 5-minute conversation, these macro trends. I'd love to get some thoughts and feedbacks across the country if you guys are seeing different You can raise your hand, again, participant, and his hand, or speak.
Frank, it's Scott. Can you hear me?
Hold music. Yeah, go for it.
I agree. I think there will be some potential reshoring, onshoring. I just locally here in Charlotte, I'm speaking Piedmont property, Charlotte, North Carolina. I think it's so early in the game that we haven't seen any movement or much discussion about it. I think everybody's still sort of in shock and trying to figure out, when are we getting back to work, and then what does it look like? But, I'm watching the same news, reading the same articles you guys are, and I do think that this will change some of these manufacturers. And we've actually seen it even going back the last 5 years. We've got some manufacturers that do like parts that are more critical timing wise, and that they are already starting to look at is this something we need to do in the United States just so our chain isn't disrupted for some of these catastrophes. So my comment is yes, I think so. We don't have anything that's happened here in the last 3 weeks to justify it, but I think it will.
Thanks, Scott. Brendan, not coming out of Chicago, are you guys seeing anything there? Any conversations?
Yeah, I agree with all of your sentiments, and I agree with Scott as well. I think we're hearing some rumblings of potential reshoring. but until the dust settles, people just aren't necessarily comfortable with pulling the trigger on any, additional space requirements. I think the requirement is there, and I think, give it 60, 90 days, however long this is going to be. Nobody has a crystal ball, right? But I think there will be, kind of some pent up demand that should drive a little bit of a recovery once we get through this little bit of a pause here. In addition, what we're really trying to do locally is I think there's some opportunity for either owner occupants or private investors that may be willing to sell depending on what their debt structure is. If there are liquidity issues, I mean, look, any market has opportunities, right? I think there is some purchase opportunities for either smaller investors, either our own group or third parties for potential acquisitions.
That's great. I've got some of the topics kind of on my next slide here, and I think I'd love to talk about that and get everyone's feedback. I got Papa. I don't know who Papa is. Papa's raising his hand.
Oh, that's me. That's Dick Sullivan, TRI commercial in the San Francisco.
Hey, Dick.
How you doing?
Good.
But what I think we're going to see as well is I think there's going to be a certain percentage of companies that were occupying space that just simply are not going to be able to reopen up, or they're going to decide to retire and not open up, which is going to create some potential vacancies in the area. But I also think that where I was going with this is, I think that the fact that a lot of companies now have experienced their employees working from home and telecommuting, I think a lot of companies are going to start to want to downsize, particularly the office aspect of their companies. But also, I think they'll think about moving their office aspect of buildings into warehouse facilities that have office. So I think there will be definitely some opportunities there for us.
That's a great insight. I feel like we've seen some of that in LA with larger office components in industrial buildings, but I think about how that might push this even further forward. Provenza.
Good morning, guys. Hey, Geoff Provenza, Chicago, work with Brennan. Just to kind of add to a couple of things he said. I signed a 90,000 square foot lease in a new construction development last week. Kind of what I've been seeing is if the deal was 60, 70, 80% down the road before Corona hit, most of those deals have still been moving forward. If they were in the earlier stages, they have obviously either hit the pause button or have died altogether. And again, as what Brendan said, there's also some local investors and even some national guys that are, kind of getting excited that they think they're going to be able to find some pretty good deals for either redevelopment or just buying some land. But we have not seen that pricing come down yet. I'm sure in the next 60 to 90 days, we may see a few things kind of shake out where there's ownership was a little over leveraged or something along those lines, but we're definitely not going to see a fire sale of a lot of industrial here in Chicago, is what my opinion. So.
Thank you. Dustin Whistler.
We've completed 3 transactions this week, 2 industrial and 1 larger office deal. What I'm seeing is I don't think we're going to see a lot of rent decline here in Denver, but I do think we're going to see better motivation, a little bit more balance between tenant and landlord. We focus on the tenant side, and I'm just seeing a lot more motivation from landlords to give up on terms that we pursue and can't get over the last 4 years or 5 years. And to some extent, free rent or some other terms in the lease. But then one other thing I thought I threw out here, which I threw out on the office meeting as well, is just that I think there's what we were calling blend extend in 2008, 2009, 10 is back, I think. And I think it might be terminate as to a portion of the space that they had to, I think, Dick's point, and right size. So one of our manufacturing clients we're drafting a letter of intent right now that says we're going to terminate as to half of our space and extend our lease for 5 years on the other half. And in an effort to try to balance out their lease is up in a year. We'd be out looking for different spaces right now anyway. And if we can go ahead and accelerate that end of their term and get them on better footing, in addition to rent vacation over the next couple months, they're far more likely to survive this. So that's my feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. Chris, you mind going to the next slide? And so this, I kind of put this all on one slide, and these are, we can deviate from this. I know some other people raise their hand here, and I'll get to you. But one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about that I've experienced personally is that I've seen a mixed bag of tenants that I represent and landlords where they want the broker to be involved. I would say the majority of people have approached their landlord directly and are trying to develop a good communication, open line of communication with the landlord directly. But some people have said, Frank, this is your job. I want you to negotiate this for me. I can tell you it typically does not go well and is not received well in my experience, but I wanted to see if anybody else has had experience with that or has an opinion or some advice on that for everyone. Go ahead and just talk. If, yeah, Joe, or I know Joe, you got your hand raised, or Mike Hale.
I think it depends on the landlord. We're working with a tenant right now. They have 2 spots in DFW. One's 40, one's 120 that we just put them in last year. And the 40 is, it's an owner user who owns the building. They bought it from a developer who developed the building. And we're being very successful in getting some rent relief there, where we're really trading about a month of free rent for a month of term and able to get paid on it. But with the institutional landlord with the 100,000 square foot space, the landlord's really bucking up and really not participating with us. They're kind of pushing it down to PM and going straight with the tenant. But with the entrepreneurial landlords, we're having a lot of success and able to kind of maybe take advantage of the situation.
Hello, this is Steve Ratchford.
Oh, just say again?
Go ahead, Steve.
I didn't hear.
I think, Steve, do you want to say something? Oh. Mike, hey, you have anything you want to add?
Well, I guess just to your question about rent relief, I had something come up this last week that, my guy was needing to sign the rent commencement because it was a new build out for his space, and the rent was supposed to commence next month, but they've really been impacted by this situation. And he wanted me to go back to ownership and ask for some further rent relief. And I had some trouble getting him as well as the landlord all on board. And so landlord and the tenant, who landlord's a local guy who is in the process of actually selling.
Just for that little garage building now.
Got Steve Ratchford, will you mute yourself?
Right. So
Steve Ratchford, mute. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Long story short, tenant and landlord ended up getting together, and he ended up getting 1 more month of free rent and extending his lease another month. So it was actually a win-win situation. I represented the tenant, and it was good, but I feel your pain. It's an uncomfortable situation to be put in the middle of.
Have you guys, anybody seen how, or I'd love to hear how institutional landlords are handling this? LA is a big institutional market, and a lot of them are having people fill out these very large, lengthy forms, go through a process, and a lot of them are not giving sort of deferment or relief. Are you guys seeing anything different than that across the country?
I'm seeing the same thing, where the institutional guys are really pushing it down, making it a pain in the ass, saying we need a letter from your CEO. We need, evidence that you're bleeding out right now, and you need to fill out these 8 forms. So they're really making it hard on tenants to get any rent relief, at least from my side. Best chance is when you have an unsavvy landlord, and you may be able to pull the wool over their eyes and get a few free months.
Hey, Kansas City, what do you have to say about it?
We have 200 industrial tenants of our own, and we're of course we're in a entrepreneurial landlord, but we've kind of picked a one-size-fits-all type where we say we'll give you 3 months rent, which was April, May, and June, in addition to another year on the lease, and we'll spread over those 3 abated months over the remaining term at 0% interest. So we've done that probably 7 or 8 times so far, and it's been good. Now we'll see what happens when May rent is due, but for now it's been okay.
So you're adding your year of term to the lease as well?
Yes, we're getting 3 months abated. We're giving 3 months abated and 1 year. Even if they've got short term or long, we're adding a year and then spreading out those abated months over the remaining term, commencing in July.
I'll share one example I just heard of yesterday, which is a tenant came for rent relief and their lease expires in 2 years. And in addition of giving rent, some free and some rent deferral, the landlord forced the tenant to exercise their option. So I think, some
I've heard
landlords
examples of a landlord forcing the tenant to give up their option.
Yeah, well, it depends. I guess it depends on the creditworthiness of the tenant, right?
Right, or what you want. But
Exactly.
I've heard that
Yeah.
landlords are using this to force tenants to give up options to extend leases or give up options to purchase, if there is one.
Alan, you have something you want to add from Atlanta?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. That's why I was on the phone with a client during this meeting about his space and his situation. So what we're doing is everybody's different and everybody handles it differently. As far as whether you should be negotiating or the tenant, we recommend that the tenant have a conversation directly with the owner, because most of our position is typically not adversarial, but it's more we're representing one side and landlords representing their side, and we're trying to get the best deal we can for our client. And that doesn't go over too well with most owners right now. They're struggling, they're having issues. So, what we're suggesting to our clients is, hey, you deal with them directly. You'll get a lot more out of them. Now, but we will be whispering in your ear what seems right, what doesn't seem right, what to expect, what not to expect, so that you're not just saying it's your problem, not mine, but you're helping them get through it in a way that gets them the best deal possible. So, now if they absolutely don't want to do it, that's one thing, but most of these tenants need to deal directly with the property manager, and they need to be prepared to submit financials. I mean, it's our job as tenant reps to make sure that they know what to expect. I mean, these landlords, most of them aren't going to say, oh, okay, fine, go ahead, we'll defer for 3 months and spread it out over, whatever time. Most landlords want to see that, number one, they self-help. Number two, what's your financial situation? And if they're not prepared to give that away, then I think they're in for some trouble. And we also have some legal lawyer clients that took a very aggressive approach, and we just said, guys, that's not the right way to do this. So that's my feedback on the ask who represents who.
That's great advice. My second kind of topic or question here is, I am curious, have any of your clients received monies from the CARE Act? And if so, are there any stories? I have several, and Alan, I'll let you answer, several that have applied, but nobody has actually received any monies or seen what it's going to look like. So I'd love to hear. Go ahead, Alan. I know you raised your hand.
Sorry. We got our money yesterday. And I think it is all your bank. If you've got a banker or somebody that you have a relationship with, they can get you the money. You got to get on that. You got to be on their radar. But we got our money yesterday. It was funded in our account. And so if you don't have an advocate for you or your client at the bank, you're not going to be getting, you're going to be just in a line.
Alan, was that part of the SBA or was that the PPP section?
PPP.
Okay. Jared Katz.
We were funded yesterday through the PPP as well, and I also did one through my personal S corp, and I was funded yesterday as well. But our partner in MDL Group, Kurt Anderson, who also owns a large CPA firm, his bank mishandled his application and submitted it wrong, and cost his company $600,000 of PPP. So I'll echo Alan and say that it has a lot to do with your relationship with your lender. We were with Chase, and they pushed us through and called us every step of the way to make sure it was pushed through. But if you don't have a good banking relationship, for example, my personal was with Wells Fargo, and they just kicked me down the road, and I ended up going with a local bank who got me personally funded. And Wells Fargo didn't even send me the application until it was too late. So you really have to have a solid relationship.
That's, yeah, amen. Hensley.
Echoing those two comments, just more details. So we have not received our money. We've been given an SBA number and saying that the money is allocated. We're just finalizing the deal. But just as an example, again, we went through the lender we've got the best relationship with, because that's the key. It's a company called Pinnacle Bank. They probably operate in maybe 3 or 4 states. I don't know how many branches or what their deposits are, but not a huge bank. Our lender told us, our individual lender told us that their bank alone had 12,000 applications they put in, and our individual banker had 47. So just going back to the sheer volume of the need for that PPP, in my opinion, what I've seen is that I can't imagine Congress not allocating, another $250, $300 billion towards it. So hopefully for any of those clients or you guys that haven't been funded, you missed the window. There should be additional funds coming. But yeah, it all comes down to, which goes back to, for all of us as principals or your clients or whatever else, make sure you got a good lending relationship for these times.
Thanks. Institutionally owned versus privately owned. How are you guys approaching them each based on their motivations? And what I want to talk about is a little bit less about rent relief, but looking in a forward-looking business development conversation. How are you guys approaching an institutionally owned landlord, has a large portfolio in your market, very, well, if it's a REIT, they're driven by occupancy. Is a privately owned landlord who you might be advising, like some of you have mentioned, they have debt issues, they might have cash flow issues or distributions that need to be made to limited partners. I'd love to hear, kind of talk about your guys' thoughts on approach and how, from a business development standpoint, we can get in front of these people and have some good tools and conversations. It's Papa. Did you raise your hand again?
Yeah, I did. Dick Sullivan, PRI Commercial. What I've been telling my clients and customers are they should look at it, particularly the property owner should look at it on a case-by-case basis, because every client is different, every tenant is different, and as you just said, they need to look at the financial information to see how impacted each tenant has been on this Corona thing. So, and make the decision from that. If the company's been a good company, been there for a while, pays their rent on time, and doesn't beat up the real estate, they're certainly going to be interested in doing whatever they can do to help them through this situation and figure out a way to either recoup it or just let it go on the back end of this thing. But I think it's just a case-by-case basis. They have to look at it. You can't put a blanket solution on all of it.
Anybody else have any thoughts? I'll move on.
Let me say.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I wanted to add too. on the PPP and the monies from the government, I think the media put it in a big panic yesterday when they made very public that the funding, the 350 billion, is now all been spent, and they have to approve another 250 billion to keep it going. But fortunately, I only have 2 clients that applied for the relief, and they had both received affirmation before yesterday that their applications had been approved and the money's on the way. But all the new ones, they started getting panicky and saying, "Oh, are we going to get any more?" And so now it's up to the Congress. They have a bill to approve another 250 billion for it, and I'm sure they're going to do it. It's just that they have to get their act together and agree.
Yeah. New investments. I've been getting numerous calls. I think even you, Brendan, you mentioned that a lot of institutional investors are running around and having conversations about, they think this is a great opportunity. I think unfortunately in our market right now, everybody is pencils down, waiting to see what's going to happen, particularly because nobody knows what market rates are today. And who knows when we're going to know what market rates are. And on top of that, some of the conversations that I've had with investors are their costs have gone up, particularly debt, which is something I'd love to get some feedback on there. And I'll touch on that in a second. But, construction loans, I've heard rumors of, going from, particularly in our market, from 4% to 5.25%, just based on risk. And then really, what is what's a market cap rate today versus what it was just 4 weeks ago. So here, all these topics, I'd love to just kind of get a little going. The other thing I was going to say is about the debt here. If anybody has any kind of examples of a deal where they've, in the last couple of weeks had to go and get debt or get financing on a property, if that's possible, what it cost and what the timeline looks for something like that. I got Shannon Cap. Wait,
that's my that's abbreviation for my wife's name. Yeah. So I'm working on a deal right now. It's actually a vacant land deal, and the development's going to be senior housing. We've been working on it for a couple of months, and we're ready to sign. And lo and behold, of course, 2 weeks ago, we hear that they want to reduce the price by 35% just because higher cost, construction, debt, hard to get good financing. They might have to sit on the property for a while. And, as of yesterday, I think both parties have agreed. What I'm trying to do with any deal I'm working on right now, personally, I'm just trying to extend it. They agreed basically to keep all the terms and conditions the same. And we just gave them an additional, they had 120 to 100, and well, if they could exercise an extension, 180 days total. We gave them another 120 just because. Just out of good faith, we were going to sign a purchase agreement, and basically both parties are going to do nothing. And, my point was nobody knows. I mean, they're talking 08, 09, and I personally, I think that's ridiculous. Nobody knows, though. I can't look at them and say in 4 months we're back to normal, and they can't look at me and say we're screwed for the next 2 years. So let's just push pause on this thing, and let's wait. Let's wait it out. And I'm doing that for all of my deals that I'm either going under contract or that I'm already under contract. I'm getting extensions for, and I'm not sure any seller in the right mind wouldn't be open to that. I mean, what's your alternative? Just kill the deal? I mean, no one knows what's in store for us the next 3 or 4 months. So. I mean, we're going to see some initial hurt. The question is for how long and how soon can we get back to, even if it's 80% of normalcy. So that's what I'm just trying to, it's going to, and from a brokerage standpoint, obviously it's going to hurt us come, probably more so next quarter, because what we're working on now affects next quarter for deals that are, purchase sale deals. But what's our option at this point? So I'm just trying to keep the deals alive.
And when they're having those conversations, is the conversation more about market risk, or are any of them having conversations with lenders and being told that they can't get the money or that the financing terms have changed?
Both, all the above. And not saying that they're being disingenuous. I mean, the lenders right now are freaking out. I mean, they're going crazy with what's going on with PPP and everything else. But again, the lenders also don't know where this is going, in 3 to 6 months. So, and if nothing's changed in 120 days, then we might just pull the plug altogether, or maybe my seller client gets more motivated. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, basically, is the stance I'm taking.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Sorry, did you raise your hand again? Oh, Latina.
Oh, there I am. You got me? Yeah, you got me.
Yep, gotcha.
Just kind of going off of what Grizzly Capitano said over there. I had one yesterday, and it was retail related, but of course it's real estate, and it was a development deal. Basically, the buyer called me up and said, look, we got to extend this thing 60 days. We're in the middle, we're near the end of a due diligence period. So I called up the sellers and I basically explained, and they were very understanding, of course, we'll extend it 60 days, no problem. So I go over and I meet with the buyer briefly in the parking lot of a restaurant and, to sign the paperwork. And I said, well, where do we stand on everything? And they said, we're done. We'd be settling next week if it wasn't for this. But with the unknown, and again, this is retail related, somewhat unrelated, but still across the board, we just want to wait it out 60 days before we close. We don't want to start paying the debt, and we want to see where we land 60 days from now. So kind of goes off of what you were saying, Jason.
Yeah. Jerry?
Yeah, I closed on a 40,000 square foot building last week that was occupied about 7,000 square feet by the seller, and the buyer was actually going to occupy another 7,000 feet. So it was semi-investment, semi-owner occupied. Nevada State Bank totally failed on the loan, but I got him in touch with another local bank, and they funded and closed. And what they told me was that they're still open for business, but they're not going to play this game with the 10-year treasury with the note, with the interest rates, and that they're only going to do deals if they're 3.5% to 4% above whatever the 10-year treasury is. So this deal ended up closing close to 5% because of the vacancy and the amount of deferred maintenance. But they did close the loan. Now, this was a couple days before the PPP when they fully committed to the loan. Now, what we're seeing is every bank is so focused on this PPP because they got 5% commission on it with very little risk, fully secured by the federal government. So once this PPP thing shakes out and they fully allocate those funds, I think we're going to see our lenders start paying more attention. And I did have an investment deal fall out last week as well. And the lender actually was gracious enough to get on the phone with us. And he said the same exact thing, that institutional lending is pretty much on hold until they see what happens. And all of the local banks are so preoccupied with the PPP and the CARES Act that they can't focus on traditional lending. So I think it's a day-by-day change. And I think every week we're going to see and say something different.
Into that, Jared, it sounds like, yeah, we're all just guessing right now.
Yeah.
So on the institutional side, we were in the process. We just went non-contingent last week on selling a redevelopment site, a General Mills facility in Los Angeles. And, from a real world anecdotal evidence, when it came time to go hard, there were some extenuating circumstances, as you can imagine, and some risk factors that have changed and unknown market pricing on a risky redevelopment of a site. And so there was about a 10% retrade of the buyer, which was a publicly traded REIT. They did go non-contingent on a big deposit, and General Mills, not gladly, but said, we'll take that deal today because we don't know, that discount it's probably going to be the same in 90 days. It might be bigger. And so they took the deal, and it's supposed to close in 2 weeks. But I'm curious if anybody else has seen a retrade in that type of scenario where the seller has, said begrudgingly, I'd rather get it done than take the risk of riding this thing out. Jason?
Yeah, we just closed on a 40,000 square foot industrial building last week, and that's exactly what happened. The guy in the 11th hour got cold feet and just flat out came out and asked for a reduction. The seller at that point, regardless of the market, regardless of what's going on out there, all of our deals always comes down to motivation, right? I mean, we can't create motivation. We can try to persuade someone it's a good deal if it is a good deal, or a bad deal if it's a bad deal, but it's going to come down to motivation. Our particular seller, we represent both sides, but our seller, I mean, he really needed to get this deal done, and he reluctantly gave in to it wasn't an obnoxious reduction, but it was a reduction just because. And the buyer had enough work promised to him. He's an automotive supplier, and I think a lot of it was FCA work for the new Cherokee, and he felt comfortable. He owns several buildings, so it's not like he's moving his one operation. And we closed the deal. So it always comes down to, the parties that are involved.
Yep. I think kind of transitioning a little bit on motivations and everything there. How are you guys capitalizing on, we talked about some of these investments, potential purchase opportunities, but the fact that one of the things we talk about are the private owner users who have been significantly impacted by this, might have a loan coming due, their income is down significantly, or they're completely shut down altogether, and the prospects of them rebounding from this are not good. How are you guys approaching and making business development, cold calls or warm calls to these potential sellers, in my opinion? Jared.
Called me out.
Your hand was up. So are you leaving? You left it.
I left it up. Trying to say hi. I think what we're doing is less cold calling and warm calling, and more calling to check on them and make sure that they have all of the information they need from the CARES Act. And if not, we're putting them in touch with the right bankers. We're encouraging them to call their bankers. We actually, MDL Group manages just over 13 million feet. So our poor property managers are getting probably 50 calls a day each to defer rent. So we've got a little bit of experience from them on how they're responding and how we're recommending our landlords respond. But when my clients need help, I'm taking a lot of the same approach as Alan, as telling them what to say when they call their landlord. A couple of the larger clients I'm calling on their behalf, not for a fee, but really just to help them. We're looking at this as a true opportunity to really show our clients what we're made of and be there for them in hard times as well as good times. So we're not just working for them when there's a fee, we're working for them when they need us, and providing them any information they need more on a consultative way instead of trying to get a brokerage transaction out of it. And we believe that they're going to remember that. We're also, if you guys are watching, what Chaim's doing is he's getting out there on the social media, and we have a sales consultant that trains all of our agents, and we partnered with her, and we've opened it up to, did you guys lose me?
Nope, we got you.
My computer went black. We've opened it up to anyone who wants to participate for 30 days. She's going to do a 30-day sales training. So we're sort of using that as a recruitment tool, but we're also just using it to help the community. So like I said, I don't think we're doing any cold call for new business. We're doing cold call for relationship building.
I think that's a real good idea during these times to solidify existing relationships and try and develop new ones.
Yeah, I'll add, I think from our perspective, one of our partners, Matt Stringfellow, who might be on the call, we had a brilliant idea, which is, as you mentioned, Jared, property managers and asset managers who are probably working harder than they've ever worked in their entire lives right now. Matt's idea was that we, through Drizzly or alcohol delivery, send all of our existing asset managers a bottle of booze. And so we have done that, and we've gotten their home addresses and sent notes to them and said, we think you could use this right now. It has gone over very, very well. So feel free to steal the idea from Matt if anybody wants to.
We sent everyone a deck of cards with our logo on it and our team hashtag, because They need something to do, but I like liquor better than a deck of cards.
I agree, Jared. Rick Phillips.
Hey, good morning, guys. Rick Phillips, TRI Commercial out of Sacramento. And great comments, great feedback. So I appreciate that. And I think it's probably worth mentioning, at least from the Sacramento market, industrial, we're at 3.5% vacancy. And, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were hitting on all 8 cylinders like many markets. And unlike the financial crisis of the 08, 09, where it's the proverbial falling knife and where do you catch it and where the prices drop, our economy just went on hold. So there's just a big pause. And I agree with some of the sentiments that are said. No one knows where we're going to come out the other side, but it's not like markets are crashing. We're just on hold and we've been paralyzed. So I do think there's going to be a lot of pent up demand. It's once we get the lights turned back on, we're going to roll up in the third quarter and start to wind up again. And I'm going to be very optimistic about fourth quarter this year. So those are my thoughts.
Rick, I was on an NAIOP call and there was a gentleman on there who I thought said it very well. And he could be right, could be wrong, but his statement was that this is not a financial event, it's a natural disaster.
Well said. Yeah.
So I think, unfortunately, it's probably going to become a financial event in the long term here. But, I think for the time being, you're spot on, Rick.
The way we're looking at it is that this is not like 07, 08, 09, where dumb people making dumb decisions got in trouble. This is affecting everybody, dumb people, rich people, poor people. So it's not as if we've got winners and losers. We're all losers.
I'd like to, I think as brokers and industrial, I think we're poised to be big winners coming out of this. Provenza.
One thing I've done the last couple of weeks, I've called whether it was a buyer or seller represented last year, every deal that I didn't make last year, I'm trying to revisit those. I'm assuming one of those parties is a little bit more realistic on price, or, some things have obviously changed. So calling every deal I didn't make, trying to put it back together.
That's a great idea. Hensley?
Going back to your question about prospecting, I think it is a difficult time to just cold call and prospect because you feel like a vulture out there trying to find somebody that's, in dire straits. But here's an idea for prospecting for anybody that's a subscriber to the Dark Star, aka CoStar. They now have a public database of all properties, and you can actually search on loan maturity. If you go in there and search on loan maturity, you can, just 3 months, 6 months, whatever you want to. And the data is pretty good. Some of it's already been sold, but you got to figure that those folks, and for us, we're looking at it more for owner users, for investors too, is that, they're going to be coming upon a decision time in the next, call it 6 months to renew a loan. And if the lenders aren't in the market, there may be an opportunity. One, is it an investor wanting to sell because he can't renew? Number two, and this is what we're hopefully going to find out is, are there some isolated cases out there where maybe you have an owner user who had never looked at a sale leaseback, but now they're going to look at a sale leaseback as an option to free up some equity in property because the lender doesn't want to renew a loan, or they're giving them a hard time, or the rate's going to be high, or whatever it may be. So again, just an idea.
That's great advice, Scott. I wrote that down. Everybody should. I think I've heard of a couple of deals being tied up in our market where it's an owner user situation. The loan is coming due. The guy shut down, laid or furloughed everybody off, and, non-essential business. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm putting this perspective. In LA, we've been on businesses have been shut down now for almost 5 weeks. So, and a private investor, all cash, came in and approached them and said, hey, you're either going to give this back to the bank, or you can sell it at a discount and take the profit. And he said, I'll take the money right now. So I think we're going to see more of that.
Hey,
Ray Lyons. Go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
I'll say another comment and maybe a short story, hopefully, about talking about financing. I'm personally involved in one that I had a note coming due in about the last 6 months. We'd actually started the renewal process before all this happened. We were able to push it through. And going back to your comment about us being industrial, the underwriter, they were more worried about or more concerned with who was our tenants in the space they were in, not space, but what industry where they were in versus almost anything else. Well, luckily, all of our tenants were industrial in nature. They wanted us to prove that they had made April's rent. And after they kind of passed that test, we actually got a rate at 2.99%, which in my career, I've never heard of a sub 3 in commercial real estate. That's like an automobile loan rate. So, you know, for those clients or individuals, I mean, this is not necessarily a bad time. If you've got good real estate, loan to value is good. If you can find a lender that's not consumed by the PPP, not a bad time to lock in some long-term rates.
Ray.
Yeah, just appreciate everybody sharing the ideas they have. My focus hasn't been really talking to past clients about real estate as much as just looking who I can match up where there might be some mutual benefit where they could alleviate a little bit of pain for each other. I was able to connect somebody in this who had a sewing setup. They were focused on the TV production and movie industry, so their revenues went to zero when that shut down. But I was able to connect them to another client I sold a building to who does labels for the medical industry, surgical instruments, etc., who knows how to sterilize equipment, has the sales channels into the medical industry. And the two of them are now working on how to do masks, gowns, scrub caps, other products, because the one's got production capacity, the other's got the distribution channels and sterilization expertise. But anywhere you can link up clients, not making any revenue on it, but I think they'll remember me when times are better.
Certainly, the relationship's more important than anything right now. You're on mute, Jared. Or is your hand just constantly raised?
Sorry, I got distracted. I wanted to say that we called our lender the second the rates dropped, which was Chase for the building that MDO Group owns. And when we finished construction on our building, we were at a 5.25% rate amortized over 25 years. And we called our lender the second the rates dropped. And because of our relationship with them, they redid our loan and reduced the rate to 3.1% and re-amortize it over the life of the loan, which is 23 and a half years left. So it dropped our payment by $3,500 a month. So I would echo Ray and say, call your lenders and see what you can do about your loans on any of your real estate and make that same recommendation to your clients.
Great advice. John Foreman. John, you there? Oh, there you are. John, can't hear you. Oh, I'll wait for John. You can just speak up when you get your mic figured out. But we got about just under 10 minutes here or so left, and I just kind of wanted to, touch on these last two things, and then particularly my last slide, which is really just probably the goal, as we know about CORFAC, which is how can we be working together across the country? What does it look like from an industrial user standpoint right now out there? If there are active requirements, are you hearing of active requirements? Probably other than Amazon. Are there LTL companies, 3PLs, shipping companies, et cetera, that you guys are seeing actually take space? How can we work together? I'd love to, kind of just hear from you guys and see what's active. I can tell you in Los Angeles, we have seen some activity, particularly in liquor, wine, distribution, obviously food, as you can imagine, and then we're seeing, really anybody who is not on the garment side of retail, who had a good online presence previously. Walmart is making big moves in our market, taking space. So we're seeing a lot of that movement. But all in all, it's been pretty quiet. Trucking companies are doing very well. Generally speaking, there seems to be rates have gone up. and there's demand for bringing things in through LA Long Beach and trucking them to wherever they need to go in the country. There's also a big demand for surface parking uses, particularly on a short-term basis. So I'm curious if anybody else has some, kind of really where the market looks like and how we can work together. There you go,
Hey,
John.
Frank, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I got you.
Yeah, sorry, my mic wasn't working so well. No, I just real quick jump back to the whole cold calling side of things. I've been getting through to a lot of people. Just I think to Carolina, your point, like just staying in front of people and Ray, like you were saying, just making sure you're keeping presence. I think this time it's a shared experience across the whole world. So, we have a lot to talk about with people. And so just touching base about my institutional guys, I don't see, as far as a macro trend, I'm not seeing really anybody go after the dirt right now unless they have a tenant in tow. And so most of the spec builders and stuff like that are kind of just waiting to see what happens. But yeah, I'm finding that people are willing to pick up the phone, people are willing to answer, people are at their houses and stuff like that, and they're willing to talk. So that's what I've been seeing as far as the cold calling goes. Just want to throw that out there.
John, what's your putting you on the spot further here? When you talk to these guys, I mean, what does that conversation sound like, and how are you trying to deepen and further that relationship?
Yeah, so when I go back to my clients, it's really just saying, hey, how are you guys doing? Just number one, talking to them on a personal level, seeing how they're actually doing personally with their family and stuff like that. But then just with their company, how are they doing? What are they looking for? What's their strategy going forward here? Like, what are they looking for? What are the kind of properties that they want me to bring in front of them? Most of them have said anything with income in place, happy to look at it. There's still, I think anytime for this thing to hit, we're the best capitalized right now. So most of the developers and, most of my clients are very well capitalized right now. So it's just a matter of, making sure the unknowns get shuffled out with the rents and stuff like that. But if there's some in-place rents and there's some solid stuff, I know most of those guys are willing to look. I think everybody has an idea that there's light at the end of this tunnel. So mostly the conversation with my clients has been, what are you guys specifically looking for? How's your appetite changed during this time? And what can I bring that would be relevant for you? And then as far as cold calling on the opposite side of the spectrum to get the properties, it's just, reaching out to owners and, just seeing where they're at. There seems to be people, people are at home. I think that's the easiest thing is I'm getting through to most people and then just talking to them where they're at with their properties and, what would they be interested in selling, and some people are really interested during this time because it's hitting them hard and they want to get some cash off the table. And then some people are just, they're willing to hold and kind of wait it out.
Thanks for sharing, John. I think I'll add, where I've had the greatest success in the last couple of weeks is we've had a couple comps that have gone down, and it sounds like all of you guys have a few of those deals in your market that have actually been completed. And what I've been doing is, there's been a couple sales that have happened, and we've been very diligent in tracking down to get the full story of the sale, which is why was the price reduced? What is, every single thing we can possibly get about the comp. Same on a recent lease transaction for a 50,000 square foot building that Prologis did, where they reduced the rate by about 10% and gave 4 months of free rent in a market where typically 1 month or no month is pretty standard. And so in getting the full story on those comps, I've been sending those to people who I've spoken with or, people I haven't necessarily, and just letting them know, checking in, but also letting them know what's going on in their neighborhood with real factual information that's real time. The response that I've gotten is tremendous because people right now are eager for information and wanting to know what's happening in their market. So I think, having those good comps and then sharing them with people is a great way to get in front of clients. We got 2 more minutes here before I'm told I have to kick everybody off, but anything else that raise your hand, speak up. I just want to say thank you. I think this has been extremely productive for me. I hope it has been for all of you guys. But yeah, let me know. Anything?
Well, first of all, thanks for moderating this get together. It was very helpful and informative.
Yeah, well done, Frank. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I got a hand raised from Mike Hale. You want to talk?
Yeah, Frank, thanks again for hosting this. There was something I wanted to touch on previously, and I'm currently working with a company right now who manufactures furniture over in China, and we had started to tour property before everything kind of hit the fan here, and they've seen things come full circle with, you know, the difficulty that we see in the supply chain, and I like to think optimistically about how things are going to end up. But they had basically put their requirement on hold once things, you know, started to hit the fan here, because they saw the impact that it created over in China. And now that we hear that China is getting back on their feet, I'm starting to get some movement on my client on expanding into a larger space here, because at least I feel like we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that the economy will eventually start to open back up again. So I think that there's some reason for a positive outlook in this, you know, unfortunate situation, just given, I guess, the foresight that my client is kind of demonstrating to me right now.
That's great. Certainly, we're all trying to be optimistic. We're all going to come out of this, and it's only 10 o'clock in LA, but for everybody else, I don't know, happy hour starts at noon. So enjoy your weekends, and I think we'll be doing this again maybe in a couple of weeks. So you know, hopefully at that point we're talking about rainbows and unicorns. So love all you guys, miss you all, and I don't know. You want to say anything, Jonathan?
No, I just thank you very much on behalf of staff and leadership for doing this. And either today or Monday, everybody will get a summary. We'll have a survey in there. So if there's things you like, didn't like, how we can improve going forward, please do that. There'll be a recording of this so you can share it with people in your office. And just speaking of supply chains, I am still trying to confirm a well-known economist to do a program for us in the next week. And one of his big topics would be just, you know, the general economy, where it's going, how it looks, and also supply chain. So we will keep you posted.
Great. Thanks again, Frank.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Franco.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, Frank.
Stay safe.
Thank you.